We pulled over to the side of the road, got out of the car, and an orange trapezoid lit up in the sky. Not very high, about 1,500 feet. It just hovered there, not making a sound, but glowing orange, like pulsing orange. And then it took off at a rate that just defied the laws of physics. He saw one come out of the water in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia. And he said that what he studied in terms of physics at the Naval Academy did not prepare him to see what he saw with a spaceship flying out of the water.
What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. I have a very interesting video for y'all today. I had some electrical issues at the studio, so I couldn't record a normal video with all my equipment and everything, but I still wanted to make sure I brought you guys a video. So I was going to make this video with this interview that Ross Coulthard did with this guy. He's a CIA whistleblower. He actually went to jail for blowing the whistle on the CIA, real whistleblower. Okay, his name is John Kiriakou. You've probably seen many interviews with him, but he's got a interesting UFO story that I had never heard before. But actually, as I did some research, turns out he has told that story a few different times. And I'm not sure how I never came across this, but it's really interesting. So he had sat down with Ross Coulthard, and he told this really amazing story about seeing this UFO in the Amish countryside. And I used to live in the Amish countryside myself. Shout out Lidditz, Ephrata, Lancaster, PA. That was many, many years ago, but I lived there for a couple of years. So it's pitch dark out there. And when he was a teenager, he went out and saw this UFO with his father, and it's quite an interesting story. So normally I put like little bits in between all the clips and all that. I can't do that today. So basically I got just a little compilation video of different clips of John talking about this sighting, and also talking with Ross about, you know, what the CIA's involvement in UFOs could look at. That's the very, one of the clips as well. So I don't know, just very interesting just to hear his thoughts on telling his story, right? Also a story of a pilot that saw a UFO come out of the ocean, a spaceship come out of the ocean, right? So just very interesting. So enjoy this compilation video. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, Vetters.
But when I was 17 years old, my father and I were driving down a very dark highway through what's called Amish country. The Amish do you know what the Amish are? They don't use electricity. It was very dark. It was about 10:30 at night. We saw a brilliant flash of light, followed by a second flash and then a third flash. And I said, "What is that?" We pulled over to the side of the road, got out of the car, and an orange trapezoid lit up in the sky. Not very high, about 1,500 feet. It just hovered there, not making a sound, but glowing orange, like pulsing orange. A man pulled up in a car behind us, got out, and he said, "What is that?" And we said, "We didn't know. It was just hovering there." And then it took off at a rate that just defied the laws of physics. We got back in the car, and I said to my father, "What do we do? Should we call the police or something?" And he said, "And tell them what? We saw a flying saucer and it flew away? They're going to think we're crazy people." And so we didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody for years except for my mother. But I know what I saw. It was clear what I saw. With that as background, as you might expect in a position at the CIA, you are in regular routine contact with military officials at the officer level. I've known probably hundreds, or at least 100 pilots over the years. Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps. Literally every single one of them have seen something, and they've reported it. Most of it is still in classified reporting channels at the Pentagon, but they've all seen something. One of them, one whom I respect greatly, told me he saw one come out of the water in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia. And he said that what he studied in terms of physics at the Naval Academy did not prepare him to see what he saw with a spaceship flying out of the water.
A question I have for you before I get into that about your sighting is you probably didn't notice any sound, did you?
Not a sound at all. Nothing. No buzzing, no whirring, nothing. It was just hanging there with 4 orange lights in the 4 trapezoidal corners, glowing orange, and then it took off, like I said, at a fantastic speed from a standstill.
Yeah.
That was just not possible.
And no sonic boom.
Nothing.
See, that's the thing you always hear, when they go in the water, people witness these going in the water, no splashing or
No
coming
splashing.
out. And then also many, many people have talked about them shooting off like in an instant and thousands of miles an hour and on radar too. And I've never heard of a report once that said there was a sonic boom.
Now that you mention it, nor have I. We get back in the car. We start driving to Sharon. I said to my dad, should we call somebody? Should we call the cops or something? I was 17 at the time. And he says, and tell them what? We saw a flying saucer and then it flew away.
Yeah.
People are going to think we're nuts. And so we didn't tell anybody. I told my mom the next day. And my dad's like, yeah, it's true. That's what we saw.
You think that was a DARPA weapon?
It could have been.
Yeah. That's my inkling on a lot of this stuff.
At first, people said, like my friends, they want to know if I had been drinking, which we did a lot of back in the day. I said, no, I wasn't drinking. I was with my dad. They said, well, it had to be a balloon, right? And I said, well, that's what I would have thought, except this fantastic speed that it took off with. I've never seen anything like it. From a standstill, making no sound, just like that, and it was gone. So I said, I don't know what the heck it was. I'm not saying it was little green men. I honestly don't know what it was. It very well could have been some DARPA thing. I mean, we don't have any military bases in the area, but who knows? My father's cousin owned a restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia, and we used to go down every summer and visit with the relatives. Well, the owner's son had a best friend who was an F-18 pilot in Norfolk, Virginia. I remember as clearly as the day is that he said very casually, and this had to be 1970, I'm going to say 6 or 77. He said that as an F-18 pilot, they see these things all the time. He said there's a standard operating procedure where they document the sighting, it's classified, and then they send it into the Pentagon where it just sits in some database somewhere. And he said you get used to it, except when you see them come out of the water. He said that would always panic him because he didn't know if it had spotted him and was coming out of the water. Right. It went down to take a sample of the water. It's living underneath the water. But he and every other pilot would document every single one of these sightings. And we now know, thanks to these well-placed Pentagon leaks from 2-3 years ago, that they were all seeing these things and they were all documenting
Absolutely.
them.
I believe the CIA has played an instrumental role in probably the biggest cover-up in human history, the cover-up of a knowledge of a non-human intelligence. And one of the biggest arguments I get back from people who don't understand how intelligence works is, if that was the case, Ross, it would have leaked. That you can't keep secrets like that. And I noticed earlier in our interview, you did say that secrets have a way of leaking. Things have a way of coming out. And they have on the UAP subject. There have been.
Including video. Video. Sure. On my very first day at the CIA, my very first question was, where's the UFO stuff? And my new boss laughed and he said, that's the first question from all of us. And he says, it's a military issue. Everything's at the Pentagon. Our job is to recruit spies to steal secrets and analyze the secrets. Well, the reason why I was interested, I didn't want to come off as a crackpot, of course, right? I'm highly educated. I've had, positions of authority, with presidents, and I've met with kings and prime ministers, and I like to think I'm a serious person. If there's one thing that the CIA is actually pretty good at, it's compartmentalization. And you can stovepipe information. You can put a control on it. So, for example, you can call it top secret. You call it top secret, and 100,000 people still have access to the information. If you call it top secret, grasshopper, well, then that's a compartment. Maybe only 10 people have access to that, and they report directly to the president. So it's possible to keep a program like that secret.
What do you think? I'm inviting you to speculate here. What do you think is a plausible explanation for why the government's tied itself up in knots in the US to effectively deny any knowledge of a non-human intelligence engaging with the planet? The Pentagon's made a formal statement denying categorically that there is any extraterrestrial, they're very careful about the word, extraterrestrial engagement with this planet. They won't use the word non-human intelligence. They won't allow us to use, to change that word with NHI. So I think that's a really crucial point. Why would they conceal that? Why not just be open? Why not tell the public the truth?
Well, I think there are two reasons, and I'm just speculating. I don't have any inside information. But on the one hand, I think that over the course of many years, they hadn't wanted to cause panic. And I think that they believed that if they were to admit that there was some kind of otherworldly beings that had come to Earth and maybe crashed, and we had some of their technology, there would have been panic. God knows there was panic in the 1950s.